my grandfather who started this cult was a very, very controlling man. Very typical cult leader as well. Charismatic, something about him that just drew you in, made you want to follow him, and people worshipped the ground he walked on. So from a very young age, he was put on a high pedestal for me, and it was taught to us that God spoke through him to all of us, so that when he was saying things to us, it was the word of God. And so what became to be an issue was that there was no accountability. And so he started to abuse his power, watching a young boy have his pants pulled down by his father and belted with a leather strap in our classroom, and that be accepted and normal. But, you know, it's not just how it affected me in the moment as a child, it's how it affected me as an adult, like, and bringing those experiences forward into my life and then saying, I can't not say something about this. In the world where I grew up, women were not allowed to wear trousers at all. That if you were wearing trousers, you were just trying to be proud, put yourself above the men. It was all very negative, like you're a witch kind of stuff. So wearing trousers for me was super, super empowering. I put them on and I was like, damn, my ass looks good. We wear them every single day. It's totally normal. But for me at the time, wearing trousers was the biggest thing in the world. It was life-changing for me just to do this simple thing.
Welcome back, guys, to the Kotodama Podcast. My guest today is, for me, a little bit of a celebrity, so I'm really, really excited. It's Lilia Tarawa, and she is a #1 best-selling author. She's a keynote speaker. She's a brand coach. She used to be a former member of the Gloriavale Christian community and escaped a highly controlling religious community, and wrote her best-selling memoir, Daughter of Gloriavale, about that experience. She now is a brand coach, as I said, and works with very successful people to help them kind of make a business and out of their stories, right? Am I right, Lilia?
Yeah,
I'm
totally.
so excited.
Kia ora, lovely
you.
to meet you. I'm
Thank you
very
so
happy
much.
to be here.
Thank you so much. Sorry, the introduction part is always the hardest for me, but I actually found you years ago from your TED Talk because I just kind of stumbled upon it, and I found it super, super touching. How you talked about, how you got out of the cult or out of the religious controlling environment. I don't know if you even call it a cult.
Yeah, I do. I call it a cult, so I'm happy for you to refer to on the podcast. My book is called Daughter of Gloriavale, My Life in a Religious Cult, and my TED Talk is I grew up in a cult. It was heaven and hell. So to me, it's very clearly a cult. And I also call it a religious commune, a religious community. It's also a church. So all of those labels are completely all right to use.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Because I love how you know, when you say it was heaven and hell, even in your TED Talk, right? And I just find that so interesting, the contrast of how a lot of these traumas that people go through can not only be hard, but there can also be
Yeah.
beautiful things about these situations. Can you talk a little bit about what was beautiful about it and what was, less wonderful about it?
Okay. Well, I think that I'll give everyone some background. So I grew up in a religious cult called Gloriavale on the west coast of New Zealand, South Island, and it was a community of 500 strong. We had very, very big families. So I'm one of 10 siblings. They practiced a evangelical fundamentalist version of Christianity, and it also had elements of like Amish, Hutterite, almost mixed into it, where all the women wore long blue dresses with covered our heads, covered to our wrists, covered to our ankles. The men wore trousers and shirts, all in the same color. So there was definitely a uniform that we had to wear. And we lived in hostels on a massive, massive farm. The hostels would have almost, I think, 12 families in one big floor, and then a lounge room area, like a massive big lounge room area where those 12 families would socialize. And then you had one room per family. So I grew grow up sleeping in bunk beds with my brothers and sisters in the same room as all of them, which was totally normal to me. Looking back on it now, I'm like, that's kind of crazy. But that's how I lived and grew up. Like, we were in such close community, and all the money was pooled. So no one had any money of their own. The community took care of everything. It had a school. It had a massive big commercial kitchen, which turned out food for 500 people every single day. We had a massive big mess hall with huge big long tables, and we would all sit in our family tables together. And it was always loud and rowdy, and there were a lot of people around. And through every part of our life, from when I first remember growing up, it was about the Bible, and it was about the religion and the belief. So from a very, very young age, I grew up as a Christian child. I was baptized when I was 10 years old, and I really loved and enjoyed so many elements of what it was that made it was like a massive big family. That's really the only way I can describe it. I was so close with my cousins. I was so close with all my friends. We went to school together, plus we had dinner together, plus we lived in the same hostel together. So there was this really close-knit community. And when it first started, that was the idea, that you would come into community and it would create a place where you can be together and live and practice your faith in community. What started to go wrong, though, was that my grandfather, who started this cult, was a very, very controlling man. Very typical cult leader as well. Charismatic, something about him that just drew you in, made you want to believe him and follow him. And people worshipped the ground he walked on. So from a very young age, he was put on a high pedestal for me. And it was taught to us that God spoke through him to all of us, so that when he was saying things to us, it was the word of God. And so what became to be an issue was that there was no accountability or anyone to hold him in control, basically. And so he started to abuse his power. And what happened is my grandfather was imprisoned for quite a few different counts of sexual assault, and some different counts of children as well. And I talk about this, I address it in my book. And that was when we were living in Gloriavale, was told to us like the world was persecuting him. And that was just something that he had to go through in order to strengthen his faith in God. And so much of the news and the things that had happened, they were not told to our community either. So we didn't have access to radio, to TV, to all the general news outlets and information that people would have access to learn about these things. So basically, he could get away with whatever, really, because there was no one there to hold him to account. And it was so secretive, and it created such a toxic environment where these types of things started to happen. There were also arranged marriages, and it was the arranged marriages that was one of the last straws for me. So basically, my best friend was put into an arranged marriage, and she was so unhappy. Like, she was going to be sent over to India to marry this man she didn't love, didn't have feelings for at all. And she ended up leaving Gloriavale, packing her bags, running away, because she was like, I cannot do this. And that was for me a very poignant moment where I was like, I don't think I can stay here if people are being treated in this way either, if there is so much wrongdoing being hidden. So that's just a little bit of background around the cult in itself, and then also sort of what made me leave, the things that started to go wrong. And I think it's just important for everyone here to know that I was also born into this cult. So it wasn't something that I looked at and joined. I was born into it from a very, very young age. This was all I had ever known. There was nothing else for my life. It was completely normal way of life for me.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing often with families in general, okay? Because I find the term cult interesting because I'm always like, okay, what even is a cult? At one point, isn't everything a cult? This might be a bit of a wild take, but I feel like even like pop culture and celebrity idolization often is a bit cultish, and religious communities in general are a bit cultish, and even single family households, where you are kind of isolated in a way. So of course your example is a bit more in your face, and people can really look at your story and like see why that's so controlling and why that's so isolating even though you're in a community, right? You have no access to outside information. And that's a big thing. That's a big power move, right? Like that's how you can control people, and that's how you can, as you said, your grandfather was the founder. So, but I often feel like in many different ways, even companies sometimes I feel like can be a bit cultish. And it's interesting. But something that stood out to me when I was listening to your story was actually how sensitive you seem to be to the things and the abuse that happened around you. So, physical abuse, I guess emotional abuse too. And you seemed very emotionally affected by it. And I think often in these environments where people benefit from, abusing people, is that they will call you sensitive or something. And I don't know if that happened to you, but I often feel like that the sensitive people in this world are actually the strongest people and the people who are meant to change things, because we should be sensitive because it's crazy, right? The world is crazy at one point. So
so interesting. I actually was thinking about my grandfather the other day, and I think it was yesterday. And because for me, growing up in an environment where it was never safe to be seen, it was never safe to feel your feelings, what you felt and thought were not valid. As an adult, I've had to reclaim those parts of myself, and that's about inner healing. It's about really, really going deep inside of myself and loving those parts of myself that previously I've had to just, to survive, reject those parts of myself. And that is what we do in abusive and toxic environments. A lot of the time you do have to just numb. And that's a coping mechanism. You numb to be able to survive and live in that world and get through it. As an adult, when you come out of those environments and you start to feel literally everything and process everything that you went through, that becomes so hard and so heavy to hold. And this is where you need support. I needed support. I needed therapy. I needed safe spaces that could hold me and make room for that. And this is why I wrote my story. This is why I wrote my book and decided to tell my story to the world, because I needed to be able to heal. And in order to do that, I had to take my story out of my body, because for so long, I had been so trapped in my body, trapped in my feelings, completely dissociated from the world around me, because it wasn't safe for me to feel normal emotions and to process normal things. You view these shocking, horrific events, like I talk about being in school and watching a young boy have his pants pulled down by his father and belted with a leather strap in our classroom, and that be accepted and normal. And I talk about how that affected me. But, it's not just how it affected me in the moment as a child. It's how it affected me as an adult, and bringing those experiences forward into my life and then saying, I can't not say something about this. I can't keep holding this any longer. And so I think it's really about today, why I do the work that I do, is how do we take our stories out of our bodies, but also how do we use that to thrive and build a life that we absolutely love. And how do we overcome those horrible, horrible things we've been through? Because I'm not the only person in the world who's lived in an abusive environment. It's so super common. At Gloriavale, people are like, oh, it's a cult. So it's a bit of a trigger word, like it's sensationalism to a degree. But honestly, Gloriavale is just an incredibly controlling, toxic community that is driven by the patriarchy and fundamentalist Christian values that provide no freedom for anyone. The people there are completely trapped and don't have a way out. And that's why we've been working very hard, with the Gloriavale Leavers Trust to try and bring people out of these communities and allow them pathways to break free. Because sometimes you just need one person who is your trigger, like my friend was for me, who can help you know that you need to leave and that it's going to be okay if you do.
Yes, yes. And I love how you talked about your friend in the TED Talk as well. And I think when you talk about patriarchal system, I guess it's this, women have to, I guess the woman all had to cook and do those kinds of labor, and the men, did other labor that was more traditionally, I guess, male. And, and it kind of, you talk about how you got like a school report or something where they told you that you have leadership abilities or leadership skills, and you were scolded for that and I guess punished for that as a woman, because that's not what you're supposed to, or maybe even, I don't know if a man in that community would be punished for that as well. I don't know actually, but it sounded like it was specifically because you're a woman and women are not supposed to have leadership skills, whatever that means. But now looking at you, you are so powerful, right? I can tell you're a leader, and I can tell it's kind of who you are. And at the same time, I can feel your femininity and your softness. But I think did basically this. I mean, you said the arranged marriage thing, right? And like, I guess being a woman in that community, I guess that's what this question is about. How did you find your femininity even now, and how did you feel at the time? Because, when we come out of these highly sexist, controlling, I don't even want to call it sexist, it's much more than that, it's completely oppressive communities, finding your femininity is so difficult sometimes, getting out of it, right? And how did you find who you really are as a woman, I guess?
Yeah, I would say that I let myself experience things. So it was very difficult for me coming into the world. We our family joined a church after we left Gloriavale, because I was still a Christian at the time. And I was looking for community. I was looking for belonging. I was looking for some sort of sense of purpose. I'd have my whole entire life and all the family I'd ever known was sort of ripped out of my life. And at that point, I was searching. So I've always been very, very creative and quite extroverted as well. So we went to church, and I also went to Polytech at the same time. So we joined a church out here, and I made a lot of friends in that church. I was there for quite a few years, and I think I was at about 22. I was really feeling like I wanted to know what sex was, and I wanted to explore what that meant for myself. So I come from Gloriavale, which is purity culture. There's no sex before marriage. So you basically have two virgins who are brought together in an arranged marriage, and they're going to be the first and last. So I was starting to have these thoughts and these ideas that I wanted to explore what sexuality meant to me, not what it meant to the people around me that have been telling me this is what it means and this is what marriage is, this is what a relationship is. And so I decided that I wanted to have sex, which was a big thing for me. And I felt that I actually needed to leave the church in order to do that. So I left the church when I was about 22. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to go into the world and experience what sex is so that I can see what that means for myself. And I think that was the door for me in terms of leaving the church after. Again, after Gloriavale, but also just leaving the church and leaving Christianity was me, going, I want to experience these things with my body, and it's actually my choice. My body belongs to me. It doesn't belong to the church. It doesn't belong to my parents. It doesn't belong to someone who says that they're going to give me in marriage to a person. It belongs to me, and I have a right to make choices about my body as an adult. And that was really the start of everything for me in terms of unlocking my choice. And I think that is just so important that we do know that we have choices and that we belong to ourselves. and that no one else has a right to dictate how we should live our lives, what we can do with our bodies, who we can love, and what we want to do. It was really freeing. And I'd come from a place with no freedom, completely oppressive, as you say.
Yeah, and I feel like they often get into your head so much. I mean, when you talk about how many situations are abusive, yes, I think most situations, sadly, most family situations are abusive in some form, some more than others. But I feel like this thing that happens a lot in religious communities, it doesn't have to be a cult, it can just be any Abrahamic religion or any religion with set rules where they get
Yes.
into your head so much that at one point, once you break free, like I kind of broke free from, being being a child, like becoming an adult and finding my own way as a woman. And I sometimes would still have these like voices in my head that were my parents' voices or my like anybody else's, even like teachers or people in my life that were influential. Do you feel that way as well? That sometimes now you're like, you have to check yourself, like, no, this is my body, this is my choice. And do you still get those voices sometimes?
Sometimes I think that, like, because I was brainwashed from a very, very young age. So just completely brainwashed and indoctrinated into a way of thinking, believing, seeing and perceiving the world, perceiving myself, those around me, perceiving who I am because I have a vagina, perceiving like other people because they have a penis, like how I should look and view and judge and experience the world around me. After leaving the church, I actually went on a journey of understanding, well, asking myself, what do I like? Who do I want to be? What makes me happy? What do I actually disagree with? Like, in knowing that, like, you're allowed to disagree. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to have an opinion. You're allowed to speak. Like, all those things, like, my beliefs when we were younger were like, women do not speak. Women stay silent. Women have downcast eyes. Women cover their head. Women are keepers at home. They look after their husbands. They have 13 children or as many children as God's going to give them. And if you look at my life today, it is like none of those things. Like, there's still elements of like who I am, and like I'm always going to be the girl who left the cult to a degree. But like, I'm child free. I am the highest income earner in our household. I designed and built my own house and home. Like, me and my partner do not subscribe to the typical gender roles that like you expected to fit in, and we never have. It's just what works for us. And it is, I just have to say this about him, it is like so healing for me to be with a man who completely accepts it and respects me for who I am without expectation, doesn't tell me how to be in the world, how I should dress, how I should talk, how I should think. He just looks at me, loves me for who I am, and accepts that, doesn't try to change me. And I do believe that that's because I have said this is the standard for myself. And I think we should all be doing this. We should all be, we teach the world around us how to treat us. When you're in situations like Gloriavale, in those toxic situations, abusive, controlling situations, it's a different story because you do have those things totally stolen from you. For me now, as a free woman, I now teach the world around me how to treat me. Like, my family know what I will and will not tolerate. That's very clear to them. And it's been tricky for us to navigate because I left the church and I identify atheist now. My family mostly are still conservative Christian. And we've managed to somehow still maintain relationships. But that was really hard because there's a way that they wanted me to be and a role that I have always played in my family, because I was a caregiver from a very young age. So I was the one who was like, I'm the third oldest of 10. I basically raised my younger siblings because my father traveled a lot for Gloriavale's businesses, and my mother was the house mother, which is the position in Gloriavale that requires the most work from a woman. It's a leadership position. She basically looks after all the household aspects of the community. So I had to step into a role of caring for my siblings. And that meant that I was always giving to others and always protecting others. And like I had guilt, and sometimes still do guilt, that I couldn't keep my brothers and sisters safe in this world. And I'm looking at that thinking, but I was a child. It wasn't my job to keep them safe. And it's about looking at each of those and deconstructing them and say, I don't have to feel that guilt today. This isn't mine to carry. You know, I was not their parent. I was a child myself who wasn't safe. And it's actually up to the adults in the world around me to create a safe environment. They didn't. So none of that is mine to carry. And I've really gone, these are the things that I will carry. These are the things I'm responsible for. But also, I'm not going to carry guilt anymore for the things that I wasn't responsible for. So that's sort of a long explanation, but I think it's all relevant, you know.
It is so relevant. I was just going to say, because I don't know if you know about me, but I used to be a flight attendant. So I used to travel around the world much, much more. And I saw a lot of different cultures, much more than most people will ever in their whole life. And I saw that a lot of places, what you're describing is kind of how many places still operate in a non-cold basis. Okay, this is how many places still operate. Women have no rights. And I'm not even a traditional feminist in the sense that most feminists are today. You know, I love men, and you know, but of course I believe in the equal rights that of women and men, and that we should all just be living peacefully with each other and let people decide for their own, you know, for their own lives. But I've seen so many cultures all around the world that are still so suppressive and so sometimes more openly than other times. And I think every woman, you know, every woman goes through this. I feel like every woman in my life and me, myself, I think we all go through, who am I actually? And having to reclaim your body anyways. It's so frustrating. Sorry, I'm getting like angry. Also listening to you, it's like it's triggering me too, because it's I love it though. Like I love it. I love the good triggering, you know. But it's when you realize like sometimes that you were shamed for things that have nothing to do with you, and it's my body and my choice, and I can do what I want. You know, it's like, why do we still have to talk about this? It's frustrating to me sometimes. And the guilt and the shame and, you know, breaking free from that. And in you as well, I can feel a bit of that frustration still. And I can so relate to that. And I've seen so much. I've seen sometimes domestic violence on planes while I was working as a flight attendant. You know, people don't even... And I'm like, if this is what you do in public, I don't want to do what you do in private to your wife. And it's just weak. It's so weak. Sorry, now I'm getting worked up, but it's just, it drives me crazy. Like how
but
this
you're
is
right.
Still,
like, you know, there's still so many people who are in these situations. And that's one of the reasons that I chose to tell my story too, because my story doesn't just give voice to me and my healing. It's about letting others know that they can free themselves as well, and that where they are right now isn't where they have to be. And I literally have had thousands and thousands of messages from readers and listeners all around the world. I've had messages where people who are in the religions that are like Jehovah's Witness will message me. Husband would message me and say, thank you for sharing my story, because it has made me a better husband today, and it's showed me that I need to treat my wife better. So it's not just about me healing. It really is about that big picture. And I think this is what happened when we share it. This is what happens when we share our stories. Like I've had 16-year-olds message me with the pictures of my book saying, oh my gosh, I'm down at the library reading your story. Like, this is amazing. This is so inspiring to me. And like, these are such young kids too. Like, it's so everyone has read my story, from elders to youth to everyone in between. And it's about how my story has changed their lives. Because really, our stories, even though they're about us, it's about where our audience sees us or sees themselves in our stories. They're a mirror for our audience to heal. That's what inspires, that's what connects. It's because they see something that they themselves are struggling with, and they think, if she can do it, I can do it. And I think this is why it's so important that more of us begin to speak and to say, I have a voice, I have an opinion, it's important, it's valid. And I think especially for women who, like, we're still living in a society that is incredibly, like, patriarchal. So, I know that my family today still is very much like that. They have those traditional views. I'm not saying that it's all totally wrong either, but I am just saying that in a society that puts one type of gender above another because of what's between your legs, like, I do sort of start to think, haven't we evolved as like a species beyond that? So, I
No,
mean,
we
we could talk
haven't.
about we could talk about this all day. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I think it's really about going, if you're navigating your life on a daily basis, I look at, well, where am I holding myself back because I'm hearing these voices, like you say. So I was in a relationship, and my partner at the time was talking to another male friend of his. And I was like, and not at one point did you invite me into that conversation. I've been waiting for you because we need to go home. And he said, well, you could have just said something. And I was like, yeah, you're kind of right. I probably could have just said something. But for me, I had always felt like I had to wait for permission to speak. And so nowadays, I don't wait for permission. If I feel that I need to speak, it's time to speak, I let myself do that. So you are the permission that you're looking for today. You don't need permission or validation from anyone else around you.
Exactly. Guys, did you hear this? This is so important. I hope this can help so many people listening, because what you said earlier as well, and healing in relationship, but also setting your own boundaries, because that's the biggest reason, right? We all sometimes meet people that are not really treating us well, but then it's on us to set the boundary and to be like, no, this is not what I accept in my life. Literally, where sometimes I look at women and I'm like, wow, if someone would have said that to me in the first sentence, I would have already been like, red flags, red flags. But it takes everyone, I guess, time and understanding and experience to go through these things and to be like, no, I don't want to do that anymore. But I think that is so inspiring how you also talk about your relationship right now. And, and I really believe in healing in relationships. And what you said with, your partner being like, well, you could have just said something. That's something I can relate to in a different way. I have that sometimes where I'm sitting with my boyfriend and I will apologize for something. And he's like, why are you apologizing for this? And I always have to sit with myself like, why am I apologizing for this? And I know why I'm, looking at, healing and stuff. But it is so mind bending once you're in a healthy relationship of like, wait, I'm not being punished for this, and it's okay to have an opinion, and I don't have to do anything or feel because I'm a girl now I have to clean up more, or the kitchen is a mess. Is that okay? There's these stupid things that we still kind of, it's crazy. So I find it super, super relatable, even though I'm not from a cult officially, but yeah, I want one more thing about that before we move more into the thing that you do today. But when you said you were born into this, right? So, and then up until 22, I mean, that's crazy. That's almost, your brain is almost fully formed. You're almost, I mean, I still think you're not really an adult until you're like 25, but you're an adult kind of. And what was the most mind-blowing thing when you left the cult and you just saw something that for other people would have seen maybe normal, but for you it was really crazy?
Yeah, so I left when I was 18. And then when I was 22 was when I left the church. So the most mind-blowing thing to me, I just have these, like, it was actually little things, but I'll give you a couple. FPOS machines, just crazy. Like that, the fact that you can put money into a bank account and then I can take a card and swipe it and you're going to give me something that I will then own. Like, that was mind blowing to me. And it's the simplest thing that nowadays we do it without thinking. But that was just like so different to me. The second one was wearing trousers. So in the world where I grew up, women were not allowed to wear trousers at all. It was that if you were like wearing trousers, you were just trying to like be proud, put yourself above the men. It was all very negative, like you're a witch kind of stuff. So wearing trousers for me was super, super empowering. I put them on and I was like, damn, my ass looks good. So that was like, for me, I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm wearing trousers. This is crazy. But nowadays, like, I've got jeans on now. We wear them every single day. It's totally normal. But for me at the time, wearing trousers was the biggest thing in the world. It was life-changing for me just to do this simple thing. And it was life-changing because I wasn't allowed to do it. And I think this is the thing. Like, what are the things that we're telling ourselves that we're not allowed to do today? Because those are the things that if you do them, you're actually taking yourself into a completely new world, giving yourself permission to do something like completely out of your comfort zone. And I'm talking about when you do have freedom of choice. But like, it was just those little things. And then the third one was really sex. Understanding that I had a choice and I was allowed to have sex with the people I chose. And I was allowed to choose my sexuality. Like that was those three, massive. Whereas for someone who maybe wasn't raised in my world, those things are very normal. Using an FPOS machine, wearing trousers and having sex.
Yeah, but it is, I'm with you, it is, I can see how that would be absolutely mind-blowing and question yourself and you kind of like exploring yourself fully in all of these aspects, little day-to-day
Yeah.
things and sexuality, which I think is such a big thing of being human and hopefully, in a healthy way. And, you being able to kind of discover that. I think that's really beautiful. And I think it's very, very inspiring. So thank you for sharing that. And, when I want to talk about, you talk about sharing your story and the power behind that. And, I'm still growing, right? I'm still a growing podcast. I just started this almost 3 months ago. So I'm still new to this. And it's so beautiful and it feels so fulfilling to me. And when there's like 100 people watching my video, I'm like, oh my God, 100 people are watching my videos. It's crazy, And I always talk about how, I had another woman on who's also like a founder of like a marketing kind of company, I guess. And she, and we talked about that too, where I'm like, 100 people is a lot of people. And we're used to these, Kardashian numbers of like millions and millions. But if you sit yourself down and you're like, wow, I shared my story, right? And even if it's 10 people and it changes someone, right? As you said, someone reads your book and it kind of moves them. It does something for them, even if they're young or old or whatever age they might be or whatever gender they might be. And I think that's so powerful. And I'm still learning that. So how do you do that with your clients, I guess, or in your business life now, or even with yourself, your own brand, I guess, right? As Lilia, now you're this public person. You did escape a cult, but now you also teach people how to tell their story and I guess use their story for something, for good and for business. So how does that work? What are your tips there? And how does someone start to do that? It's so scary.
It can be. Like, and I'm not going to lie, like when I told my story, I was terrified. To me at the time when I was telling my story, a lot of it, like I was just like, I cannot believe this is happening. Like, but the thing is that I just started, and I think that's the thing. A lot of people like look at me and go, well, you've got a TED Talk with over 12 million views. You've got a number one best-selling book. So you've got all these things. Before I had those things, I was talking online about things like my health and lifestyle tips. And I was like, I had a blog where I was sharing things and I had like maybe 200 followers. Like, I was a complete nobody online. And I think that the thing is most of us are scared to start. And in the same way, even when you're running a very successful business, to completely change the way that you're doing everything is scary. It's a massive change, especially when you're telling something so personal like your story and you're weaving storytelling into every aspect of how you market, how you talk with your audience, how you connect. but then also doing that deep inner work. That's like, how do you heal your story? But then how do you write your story in a way that connects with your audience? And how do you tell your story in a compelling way that's interesting and addictive that people are going to want to read? Because, you're telling your story, but if it's boring, people aren't going to sit around and listen to you. So how do you tell your story in an interesting way with purpose? And so this is where it comes into strategy and brand strategy, which is what I've done for many years. So when I was in Gloriavale, I was actually had the ability to work as a graphic designer and do some design for their businesses, which was a really different kind of role for women to do. They needed it though to run their businesses, and someone needed to do it. So my dad volunteered me for it, which was kind of a bit of a godsend because it gave me some skills that I've been able to bring forward into my life. Following that, I left Gloriavale, I went to Polytech and I studied visual communication. So I've always been interested in how do we communicate with each other? How do we connect with each other? Here, like you say, healing also doesn't happen in aloneness. It happens in togetherness. You heal inside of relationships. You heal when there's connection. We share and we unburden ourselves in therapy. So these are all of the things when people are coming in to tell their story and how they can weave that into their business and use it to grow their businesses, to scale their businesses, that we're looking at. We're looking at, how do you build that big brand presence, but also, how are you doing that in a way that feels true to you? Because there's so much fake online these days. And the way that I do that is I help people tell their stories and their real stories. People sometimes think, oh, well, I have to have left a cult. I have to have a sensationalism worth the story that is going to just naturally sound like it's interesting. So here's the thing. I am not the only person that left Gloriavale. There have been hundreds of people who have left Gloriavale, but I'm one of the only people who's written a book about it. So, it's not about that you don't have a story worth telling, but if you're not telling it, and I'm not saying everyone that leaves Gloriavale has to tell their story. I'm just saying that it's a bit of a misconception or a myth that your story has to be crazy or, you have to have grown up in something labeled a cult in order for it to be interesting. You can tell the most interesting stories about anything. And for people who are working in business and have built a very successful business, their stories, they do already have a lot of stories. But the problem they have is they don't know how to tell stories in an interesting way or what stories to tell. So when I did my TED Talk, we had 18 minutes. So I'm like, how do I take 27 years of life and distill it into 18 minutes of something that someone's going to want to listen to? And this is the tricky part, because people think, well, I've got to say everything. And you really don't. You only have to tell the stories that are going to give you the result that you want. So if you want to move your audience in a certain way, if you want to move your audience to feel a certain emotion, then your story that you're telling needs to be geared towards that. So I didn't randomly pick stories from my life to put in my book and to tell on the TEDx stage. I chose strategically the stories that I knew would be interesting, that I wanted people to hear to get the point across. So I was very strategic right from the beginning when I started to share online, to tell my story, to write my story. I started with what result do I want to accomplish? And people think, oh, well, you went viral. That's just luck. It's not luck. It's a plan and it's a strategy. You start back here and you make a plan and you decide what is the outcome you want, and then you reverse engineer it. So you're picking the stories out of your life that are the most interesting to achieve that result. So for example, if you're working in a particular niche and you know that your particular niche is experiencing these pain points, this is what they're struggling with, then what you do is you ask, well, what is the one story I have that I can share that will help them see how what I'm offering them is going to help overcome their pain point? And this is where it starts to get very strategic, and we look at brand strategy from, well, how do you heal your story, but how do you write it, and then how do you tell it, and weave it through absolutely every single aspect of your business so that you can connect with people, which ultimately gives you the result that people are willing to listen to you. You become the voice that event organizers want to book on their stages. And then you're also able to get podcast interviews. Like, here we are, we're on a podcast interview because I told my story. And it's like that for anyone. It's as simple as that. Like, you tell your story in an interesting way that's newsworthy. People will come and ask you to be on their podcasts, ask you onto radio shows, ask you onto TV outlets. This is where you get exposure for your brand, for your business. It really just extrapolates everything you already have in your business. And I look at a book as creating a funnel to bring people into your world. But it's a funnel that you create once and then people pay you. Like, imagine if you had a webinar and people paid you $30 to $40 to attend that webinar. You would run that webinar non-stop. A book is like that webinar, because every time someone pays you for your book, they're paying to spend time learning about you, learning about what's important to you, your beliefs, your values, exposed to you, and you're turning them from someone who's a completely cold lead into someone who is warm to hot by the time that they reach you. So this is really where I'm helping people build that into their businesses, just because it's what I've studied in, it's what I've worked in for decades. And it's just a full business system.
Yeah, and it sounds
that was
like
a very long answer, but
I loved it. I loved the answer. And it sounds like you are very, very passionate about this too. And I can tell how actually, and this is something I feel throughout my life, and I don't know if you would agree, but I feel like coming from difficult times or going through difficult times often gives us the beautiful gift of being able to feel the opposite so much deeper. Do you know what I mean? So because you grew up in an environment where there's no freedom, now that you have the freedom, it feels so much more valuable to you. I'm sure you feel that kind of freedom that most people will never feel because of the situation that you came from. And so, when you talk about, sharing your story with the world and, storytelling in general, I mean, that's just something that I feel like is so natural to humans. Like, we grow up with stories. Everything is a story, right? I mean, even now I'm telling a story. I don't even, I feel like it goes through everything, every marketing campaign, every advertising, everything is a story, and it's how well can you tell it? But I think it's so interesting because I'm still learning it. And I think you touched also kind of on the why and what you want from people, to how to respond to it. If it's a business, obviously you want the sale. But I feel like the most powerful thing even in sales is when you feel so connected to that person that you're buying something from that it doesn't even feel like you're giving them money. It feels like I'm getting something here that's important to me. It's an emotional connection.
And sales should feel like that. Like, when you're doing sales in a way that is so authentic to you, that has story woven through everything, selling becomes easy. Communication becomes easy. Content creation becomes easy when you know exactly the result that you want to get. And I think that's the piece that people sometimes miss. They miss that bit where you're like, well, what's the result I want to get? Like, think about it. If you want to let your boyfriend or your partner or your husband know and understand or grasp something about you, a lot of the time you will tell them a story about yourself to help them understand you. And that story is going to be a story that you pick that helps them most understand what you're trying to explain to them. In business, it's exactly the same, except we're not talking to our partners. We're talking to potential clients. We're talking to people that we want to bring into our world to convert them. And generally, we have a product that is amazing, but a lot of business owners don't know how to scale that up or sell that in a way that feels authentic. And they're stuck in this trap of like completely fake kind of marketing that just doesn't feel real. And so my mission and goal is really just about, well, how do we do business in a way that feels so damn good in our bodies? Because building your business, building your brand and your empire should feel so good to you. Every time you're doing something, it should feel completely aligned in your body, like you're holding this and it just feels good. Like even as I'm speaking to you, I know that everything that I'm saying is right and good for me, and it's what I truly believe because my body feels energized from my toes to my head, and I feel good and I feel warm because I'm sharing something that is true to me. When I try to fake it in business or I feel that like disconnect, I'm like, oh, that's like not right for me. I shouldn't be doing things in this way because I'm not aligned. And I think you have to listen in. Like, what is your body feeling? What's your heart feeling? What's your toes feeling? What's your arms feeling? Like, really tuning into that sensation. I do think as women, we are especially good with this. Like, we're so tuned into our bodies, and it's important to get into our bodies and feel it. Now, for someone who's grown up in an incredibly abusive world, feeling what my body is feeling has not been a good thing for me. So it's part of my journey back to myself has been to go, you're allowed to feel these things, and allowing my body to detox all of that shit. Because there's a lot of horrible feelings that just didn't have an outlet. And I had to do years and years. I've been in therapy for years to do this deep inner work, and it's horrible. Like, it is horrible, but I can just promise that on the other side of the healing, on the other side, there's a new life waiting for you.
Absolutely. And whatever it looks like for everyone, right? Whether it's therapy or for me, it's a lot. I mean, I used to go to therapy too, but more so shamanic healing, you know? So whatever it is for anyone, there's something for you guys out there, man. And I sometimes feel like the people who need it the most, especially people who are abusers or overt narcissistic abusers, or I guess sociopaths, you know, I feel like those kinds of people, they do it the least. And it's very, very, it's a shame. And I wish it was kind of mandatory at some point, you know, to at least everyone
I know
has to
what you
go.
mean. Yeah, to a degree. Like, I will just share this piece about my own healing, is that I've really had to like realize that my healing is never going to be dependent on someone else doing something. Like, I wouldn't mind an apology from some people for how I've been treated. I'm not going to wait around to get that though. That may never happen for me. I know some people wanted an apology from my grandfather too for how he treated them. And to some people, he did actually apologize. Whether it was real or not, you know, I'm not going to comment on that. I don't know. But I think for them, it was very healing. But I have gone in my life, I'm not going to, my ability to move forward, to heal, to live my life is not going to be dependent on someone else changing or someone else taking an action, because I'm not going to give my healing to someone else. And I'm in charge of that. I'm responsible for that. It belongs to me. My healing is also mine. So it's really, I just wanted to share that little piece because it's something for me. We wish the world was different, right?
Yeah.
But the people who are assholes are still going to be assholes tomorrow when they wake up in the morning. Like, I'm not going to change who I am because of that. And I'm not going to stop myself healing because of that too.
Yeah,
But I will put the
exactly.
boundary in where they don't have access to me. So I think, like you said before, boundaries are so important. Not everyone deserves access to you, and not everyone should have access to you. You have to treat your energy like it's a multi-million-dollar asset. So every time you're allowing someone to have access to you that doesn't deserve it, that drains you, they're like energy vampires. Like, you are like, literally, it's like throwing money away, because you're throwing your self-worth away. And your self-worth is so much more valuable than money. But I believe in business, our self-worth is a reflection of the money that we make as well. So sometimes people think, well, why am I stuck at this level? Why can I not reach the next level with my income? Generally, it's a self-worth thing. It's a block where we don't believe that we are worthy of that next level, or we haven't become the person that we need to hold whatever that next level is. And if we do the work on ourselves, everything shifts for us in business. When you make the one change in your own head, in your own heart, your own body, everything shifts. Suddenly your income starts to skyrocket. Things start to change. You see more clients are coming to you. And that's the work that I love to do. It's the inner stuff, because it's just so powerful.
Yeah, and it's so true. And I think the most successful people, even they say, 90% is mindset, realizing that you're worth it, realizing that you have a story to tell. This is also one of these things I'm realizing now as a new content creator and a new podcast host, who is one of my biggest values is authenticity. So I really, really pride myself in that. I'm really myself here. Obviously, not everyone sees every 100% of me right now, but it is everything I am saying I do really feel. And so that's also why I've not even looked at my phone for the questions I had prepared, because I'm just flowing with you right now. And this is so important what you said about, I think when you are in your purpose and you are in your aligned, as you say, in your body and in your, for me, it's more as also a spiritual thing of like alignment and, spiritual alignment. But, for people who are not spiritual, it's this alignment with yourself and your body and who you really are. And I think once you have that, you feel it, right? So can you talk a bit because I can feel it from you, and you feel energized. And that's something that I often feel. I feel like even though I'm feeling under the weather, now I'm awake. Now I'm like here in this conversation, and it's fun for me, and I love it. I don't know if you can tell, like I love it. So how can people, because I feel like a lot of people are stuck somewhere in a job that they don't really like, and how can they find their voice there and then get into this flow state that you're in, for example?
Yeah, I think it's like energy and health and our like mental health is not just something that magically falls in your lap. Like, I woke up this morning and I went for a run with my partner. I've got things that I do on a daily basis that keep me well. Like, I ate breakfast, I took my supplements. I make sure that every day I'm tuning in. Like, I have a community and a coach that I work with that keeps me well and healthy and helps me. So it's not that I just magically show up and suddenly have all this like beautiful, delicious energy. I've generated that because of how I'm living my life. And I think it's your choices. Again, you're responsible for those choices in your life, and your life is yours. So I'm like, I have to work out. I have to make sure that I spend quality time with my family. So yesterday, I did do some work in the afternoon, but I took the morning. I had 6 children at my house. There's a big family. I've got lots of nieces and nephews. But I let myself take work off, because if I'm constantly on all of the time, I can't show up in a good, healthy way online for my clients. So it's balance. It's designing a life that actually suits you, and it's making sure that you're not taking on a whole lot of toxic energy. So there was an Instagram Threads chat last night that it was all very, very heated about the like stepmom roles and family dynamics, all of this. Somehow I got into this chat online about it. Everyone had an opinion. And I just was saying, let's try not to be too judgmental, because we've seen one post about this family and suddenly everyone's got an opinion. And as someone who's very publicly shared their story, I just find that online, everyone likes to be a keyboard warrior, sit behind their phones and judge. And this is black and white, and I know everything about this situation because I've seen one post. There's no nuance, there's no gray area, and there's no context. So for me, I engaged with that conversation, but then I step away from it and I allow myself that that boundary is there, that I'm not going to go back on that before I go to bed, because I'm not going to be able to sleep if I'm constantly in a stimulating environment that is basically energizing my nervous system. So I have all of these boundaries in place that keep me well, that keep me healthy. So if someone wants to grow their income, what are the boundaries that you need to put in place to be able to do that? Where are you spending your time and energy on things that are not income growing, like activities? If you want to get out of a job, well, what are the steps that you're taking to do that? And how can you implement those steps into your life? Are you getting help? Like, if you want to leave your job, get a coach who can help you leave your job. It's not that simple. And I've always been a very practical person. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love some of the more ambiguous, energetic work as well and the feelings of it, but I'm also very pragmatic, very practical. I like strategies that I can implement on a daily basis, but it's just a matter of having both. So I would say you need to work to create the life you want, and it shouldn't all feel like work. Like, it was hard to go for a jog this morning, but it wasn't work, It was just part of what's very normal to me. If I didn't go, I would feel very strange, like I haven't worked out this morning. Like, because it's become so much a part of my life. Like, there's not a week goes by where I don't exercise. My partner, and I'll just talk a little bit about him. So he has been in mixed martial arts his entire life. So he can work out. Since I've met him and we've been together 6 years, he has not had a single rest day. He works out every single day without fail. And he's been sick during that period. But for him, that is the level that his body functions at. And for him, his body feels worse when it doesn't get that. So even if he's sick, he still needs to do some kind of workout for his body to feel normal, because that's his level of normal. That's his baseline, right? So we all have a baseline. For some of us, it's about, well, if your baseline's here, but you want the result that's up here, you have to lift your baseline up to here, to here, to here, until this new result becomes your baseline. So what are the steps that you need to climb up the ladder? There's a rung in a ladder, right? You need to climb each rung and achieve each little step up until you achieve a new baseline. And then that will become your new normal. And it's so simple, but we think it's like really difficult. It's not. It's about what are the simple little daily habits you need to be changing to make this here your new baseline.
Yeah, and the small things are the big things though. And I think people don't often see that because they just see the result. They just see the social media. They just see, oh, she is so successful or he's so successful. They got so much money, whatever. And yes, sometimes it is given. Sometimes people are born into that. But a lot of people really, they make it work, and it's what you said is so powerful. And I love that. I love what you talk when you talk about choices, because it is the choices we make. And I really hope that that's something that people also can take away from, listening to my podcast. Every kind of episode, I'm really on, free will and choices. Like, not everyone comes from a perfect childhood. Not everyone. Actually, most people do not come from, I have never met a person actually who comes from a perfect childhood. I've never met someone who, even people who come from very privileged financial situations might not have the good life that you think they do. So we do have to kind of create our own lives. This is our own power. And it doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man. It doesn't matter where you're from. But, everyone has their specific, I guess, like hardships there. But I think it's so powerful how you talk about that, because people always see the result and they're like, I want that. Do you though? Do you want the work that goes into that? Do you want, because I used to model a bit when I was younger, and it's like, it's not easy. You get rejected and rejected and rejected. You book one thing and people just see that one thing and they think, oh, you just have this wonderful job, or you're just on a fucking, I don't know, something, And no, there's a lot of work that goes into it, and a lot of rejection, and a lot of even jobs like that, right? Where we think, oh, someone is just posing in front of a camera. So it's just, I love it. I love how you talk about this. So, yeah, thank you so much, Lilia. And I have, for all of my guests at the end, I have a few a rapid fire round. So if you can just
Oh, nice. I love it.
Yes, let's go. Just
That
a few,
sounds fun. I love some fun. You've got to have fun in business too. If it's not fun, what are we here for?
Exactly. I love it. That's so true. So, okay. So just try not to think too deep. I mean, sometimes maybe you have, but try to answer quickly and just what comes up. So first one, something that you once hid, but now you celebrate.
My sexuality. I'm bisexual and I identify queer. So, yeah.
I love that. Okay.
That was not allowed that in the church where I grew up. No. That was a sin. But I celebrated that today.
I love that so much. Okay. What's a non-negotiable in your business,
To work out. So to look after myself, because I am a coach. So the business is me. Just to work out and to look after my health first. So I have to prioritize my health and my well-being.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have anything
non-negotiable.
Yeah. It's also like boundaries, what we talked about earlier. I love it. What do you still miss, if anything, about Gloriavale?
I miss my family. So I have a lot of cousins and people there. I miss that. I also miss the how like simple it was. The lifestyle was very simple. Sometimes there's a lot going on in this outside world. There's a lot of stuff online. Like Gloriavale is basically a beautiful hidden valley away in the Vale, lakes, mountains, rivers. I love that part of it. So I miss the people, but I miss the landscape and the environment as well.
Yeah, and I think nowadays the world is so complicated. So I think a lot of people actually look into these like Amish communities and communities that live very simply. It seems
There's
simple.
something beautiful about it.
Yeah, and that's so interesting. And what does home mean to you now?
Where I'm safe, wherever I feel safe. So the people that make me safe and the places that make me feel safe, that's home to me.
I love that so much. Thank you so much, Lilia. That was the interview. I'm
awesome.
so excited, and it was so wonderful. If you have anything else you want to tell people?
Oh gosh, I mean, we probably covered so much of it. It's been so nice to chat with you. When you first reached out to me to do a podcast interview, I haven't done podcast interviews for a while because I took a step back and that was a boundary for me. And then when you reached out to me, I was like, this feels very aligned. And that was super nice. I was like, no, there's something saying that I should say yes right now. Because I don't say yes. I decline more podcast interviews than I do accept. So I was like, no, this feels right. So that's one of those decisions, right? So, but I'm so happy that I got to spend some time with you. This has been such a nice conversation to have on a Sunday here in New Zealand.
Thank you so much.
Great way to spend a Sunday.
Yes, thank you so much. Me too. It's a Sunday here, but yeah, I'm very grateful to hear that feedback, and I get it actually from a few people who have a bigger community, and they're like, I just felt something with you, and I'm like, yes,
yeah,
I love it. So thank you for that feedback. It means a lot, and thank you so much for being my guest, Lilia. Thank you, and thank you guys so much for listening today. Please share, subscribe, comment. I read all the comments. I'm so excited. I hope that this conversation finds the right people. I'm sure it will. And see you guys next week. Bye.